Lord, I pray that you will raise up spirit-inspired leaders of the populist movement, that even in America, the Christian populists would begin to rise up to restore the nation. Christian nationalists that love America and that are sane and rational and want to see America not destroyed by the globalists. I pray that you raise up a church that is so powerful and so disruptive to the agendas of these elites that some too has to happen. Why did the heathen rage and the rulers imagine a vain thing?
Walno called for, quote, such a cleansing of a house in November that Congress will be filled with Christian nationalists and, quote, great leaders like Representatives Marjorie Taylor Greene, Madison Cawthorn, and Matt Gaetz. Yes, those Congress members who have recently gone through some very un-Christian-like scandals, respectively, profound displays of racism, divorce, and potential sex predation. He also uses the clear dog whistle of globalists to describe whose hands he does not want the country to fall into, a term which is generally understood to refer to Jewish people. But luckily for us, Walno is very vague on how he and his acolytes plan to rectify all of this. He basically just repeats over and over again that the only way to save the nation is for Christians, specifically this wild branch of Christians, to overtake all of those mountains. I think it's safe to say that that's not going to happen anytime soon, but if it does, you heard the warnings here first.
I mean, when Trump says we'll lose our country, that's not just to be quite honest, it's just gonna get so much worse. And a great analogy is that the world is made up of takers and makers. And if you get too many takers on this side, it won't balance. And Trump is a man who's a maker, and he empowers others to be makers.
In New York, the New York Young Republican Club, one of the oldest groups of young Republicans in the country, had an unusual addition to its roster of right-wing endorsements. Viktor Orban, the ruthless Hungarian authoritarian president who has embraced xenophobic nationalist ideologies and who, MSNBC reports, essentially wants to pursue what can only be described as an autocratic white Christian ethno-state. So while we could pass off these events as insignificant, of course, there have always been conservative young people, I think it's worth a deeper look into whether this is really a growing trend and if the left should be worried. It's pretty clear that the Democratic Party has become so enslaved to its corporate donors that its support is crumbling across the country, and it would be catastrophic if the party lost one of its strongest bases, young people. But this mask walkout in California isn't just a handful of kids, it's a lot of them. And while I disagree with getting rid of mask mandates just yet, this is an indication that perhaps young people no longer trust our overall pandemic strategy and feel lost and confused in a period of life that is just generally confusing. Additionally, with new political outlets catering to right-wingers like Newsmax and different social media platforms gaining traction, young people now have way more exposure to right-wing voices shouting insane conspiracy-laden takes, and it's getting hard to tell fact from fiction. And without a more coherent and supportive response from the left, who can blame them for falling prey to these loud voices? As the right gets more and more petty, now standing with literal foreign dictators to own the libs, more than ever, the Democrats need to bring more to the table for the young: material support, coherent plans for the future, and something to believe in. If not, we can only expect a mass defection, and a few of these examples are only starting to prove that that could very well be the reality.
First of all, I'd like to say all lives matter. I don't care what color you are. That's the problem here. I really believe all lives matter. And okay, back to me. Some of you know that I'm an activist here in town, and this is my home, and I always fight for it, what's right and for the future. But I am concerned about what I'm reading about the Afghanistan refugees. Keep in mind, we left a lot of Americans behind. And now you want us to have our taxpayers all put in money for these people that the government, which you know is crooked, and they lie. They say they're vetted, but y'all know that they're not. We have American children and families under the bridge we don't care about.
We've got another community Karen on our hands, folks. Santa Clarita resident and former actress Cindy Jostin took to the floor to deliver this wild public comment at a city council meeting. Just 30 miles outside Hollywood, it's clear that Cindy is still waiting for her big break. So there's a ton ton of ridiculous, hateful, idiotic things to comment on here, but the overall idea that Jostin is railing against is the resettlement of Afghan refugees in her hometown. As of this month, about 130 Afghan refugees have been temporarily settled in the region as they begin the process of trying to make their new home in the US. And let's remind ourselves, the reason they need to make this harrowing trip is because of the actions of our country. As far as I can tell, the refugees are mostly relying on community donations for support, but because people like Jostin don't have a shred of integrity, morality, or empathy, it is highly unlikely for any of these families to stay in the Santa Clarita vicinity, according to Lillian Alba, who is Vice President of Immigrant and Refugee Services for the International Institute of Los Angeles. There's a really interesting moment when Jostin says that, quote, "We have families under the bridge that we don't even care about," ostensibly referring to the homeless population in Southern California. This statement is insane to me. I'm willing to put so much money on the line that this woman would be the first to spit on unhoused people under this so-called bridge. She herself is more interested in rescuing animals than human lives.
Getting tired of the human race. We say all lives matter. Well, you know what? I rescue animals, and I'd rather rescue animals than humans.
Of course, animal rights is an important issue, but there's a time and a place for that discussion, and no one in their right mind would make such an insulting comparison of refugees to animals. Here's the truth about Jostin's rant. She's not actually asking for anything. She's not saying, here's what I would like to see funded. She's not organizing the people who have lost their jobs and demanding support from her local government. All she wants is to hear her own voice ringing out over that microphone, because the truth is, you can both support people who have lost their jobs and refugees. This isn't a zero-sum game as conservative rhetoric would consistently have us believe. She's also just lying. Of course, she wouldn't want to raise taxes to fund social programs, so she's just using this as a platform to spread a vicious message of hate. All of this is even funnier in the context of some other videos that have surfaced of Jostin. In one video caption on social media, she was seen donning full Trump regalia and can be heard yelling at a young woman saying, quote, "You're too young to be mean." People like this are not only hateful, they're also deeply morally vacuous. This Jostin stands for nothing except virtue signaling, showing up to local political forums to hear herself speak. Her IMDb page shows that she was once an actress featured on an episode of Mad TV, and it's clear that she's still just looking for any stage that will welcome her. We all know Republicans don't lead with logic, but this story is truly all over the place. So back in February, Rick Scott, who was one of the senators from Florida, unveiled a plan that has some Republicans shaking in their boots, saying that, quote, "All Americans should pay some income tax to have skin in the game, even if it's a small amount." Currently, over half of Americans pay no income tax. When he went on Sean Hannity's show to talk about his proposal, Hannity asked him if his plan would increase taxes, and Scott demurred, saying it wouldn't raise taxes on anyone. Satisfied with that answer, Hannity did not push back at all. Of course, we all know how this would have gone if Scott weren't a diehard Republican, as Democrats can't even open their mouths about funding for policies without the Fox News world screaming bloody murder about the deficit or the national debt. So what does Scott actually mean? We still don't really know, because on Monday, Scott went on the Ingram angle and reiterated his earlier point that his plan would, in fact, raise taxes on some people, namely billionaires. Gee, I wonder which political figures you got such a spectacular idea from. Scott said that all Americans, quote, "want free government stuff," and it doesn't seem like he was joking, and even crazier was Laura Ingram's response. She said he was, quote, "unabashedly populist." So what this tells me is that Republicans are setting the stage to fully take back the mantle of the party of populism. And since the Democrats are fully deaf to the cries of us on the left calling for them to center the working and middle classes, I think sadly the Republicans are primed to steal away much of the working and middle class votes. On the show, they went into a tirade against Mitch McConnell, saying that he's an old-style Bush Republican. So Mitch McConnell had stepped in upon hearing Scott's plans last month, stating clearly that should the Republicans retake Congress, raising taxes is not a priority. This twist in the rights conversation is bizarre, not only from Republican leaders, but from powerful media figures on the right as well. And make no mistake, it spells a real threat for the Democrats if they don't get themselves in gear and deliver for average Americans.